But then we left in summer of '69, so '68, '69 would have been when we were involved. We weren't there that long.
Sometime off the horn, we'll have to sit and kind of collect this a little bit. Let's make a great movie, guys. Hate to say. I've got nothing out of this. I'm not getting anything out of this. We're just having fun. Good.
One of the things I recall about the trip we made up to Toronto was that the person who sponsored us was someone who had just come into money. He'd made a huge amount of money in the stock market. And with that newfound wealth, that's what he used to buy that campground and then help build it. And he wanted to then have entertainment up there, and that's one of the ways that we got invited up there. Oh. Now, he also helped us get gigs in coffee houses in London as well as in downtown Toronto. And the thing that I remember the most about that trip was when we played in Toronto on Yonge Street, that between the sets, we would take a break and let people come up and jam with us and talk to us. And what happened in Toronto was the people who came up and sat and talked to us were all draft dodgers. And I remember that story being so powerful to me because, we had people leaving for Canada all the time to avoid the Vietnam War, but I thought that they went to Canada and had a cush life. But these people were telling a story of they were looked down on, they were ostracized, many of them were homeless, and victim of violent gang-like activity, and so they were very much happy to speak to other Americans.
Wow!
But it was a whole new view of what the draft dodgers might be facing in Canada.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I was not aware of the fact that the guy had come into money. But talking with Leaf, he was telling me that as a result of our trip, somebody put together a band in Canada that did kind of the same thing that the Fourth Watch did, but they became pretty well known in Canada and traveled in Canada. And we lived in Canada for 14 years, and I was thinking I'd like to do some research and see what that band was and whether there's some awareness of that, because we've got connections in Western Canada. It'd be interesting to see what developed there.
It's interesting too that later in life, in the late 70s, I got a job with the Selective Service, and my job was to contact those that went across the border to get away from going to Vietnam and send them a letter, and if they responded, a letter of invitation was with no punishment to come home.
Oh,
well, that's great.
That's great.
That's weird that I'm so glad you brought that up about, the draft dodgers up there.
Yeah. The other thing that I remember is that on that trip across country in that rented station wagon, the pairing of sleeping arrangements was Glen and I were partners because I was an orderly and I could help him out with anything he might need medically, and things were going well until we happened to be in a restaurant, which was a truck stop that had a tile floor, and it was a moist day, and Glen, I don't know, when you would lock your braces and then you had your crutches and you would be able to kind of ambulate. Well, we got halfway to the bathroom and suddenly your crutches started going off from under you because the floor was slick and had no moisture. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to do this wrong. He's going to go flat on his face. So I grabbed your belt loops and just held on for dear life until somebody come up and kind of bring your crutches back to you. But I thought, man, that was a near miss. I would have.
Yeah. Well, you were my guardian angel, brother.
Sure. That was one of my memories.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that you were an orderly, but I remember that now.
I remember the Canadians loved their ketchup on macaroni and cheese and about anything else.
True.
I remember being in that station wagon, and now when I look at us and all that equipment, and then your wheelchair attached to the top, crowded, but I loved the trip.
I did too. And everybody was wonderful. I mean, it was just we got along so well, and there was always some funny thing going on that we were laughing about. And
Yeah.
it's amazing.
I remember we, Doug, did you go to Wheaton? I think you did, didn't you, brother?
No, I went to Trinity.
Okay, we were in Wheaton.
I went to Moody, and then came to First Baptist. So
Okay.
And then out to San
You talked about being in a park and some guy approached you or something. I can't remember what, but it was awkward for you, and you just said, I got to go out of here. I'm leaving now. So, but God did put a lot of people in our way in a positive way, so that you could help them and to share with them.
I remember that the one outdoor concert we had, which was the one staged in Flint,
Yeah.
it was a cold day. But I was surprised at how many people showed up anyway. But I mean, it was a cold day. It was not fun.
Play guitar or bass or anything, I got a lot of asked for autographs. There were some people there with some intellectual disabilities, and I thought it was great for us playing for them. But a lot of them come up and ask for autographs.
Uh-huh.
Never really had my people seek out my autograph before.
I think the most enthusiastic crowd I ever remember playing to was where we'd gotten some notoriety in the Rochester, Southern Minnesota arena, and then we had this concert that we put on in the auditorium, St. Mary's Auditorium, in the back of the hospital.
Right.
And of course, there was a lot of nursing people that came and stuff, and the place was standing room only. I mean, it was really packed out, and they were having a good time, and we fed off of them, and they fed off of us, and we were really ripping it out. I remember that. We got them going. Remember that song we used to sing, "Away with Rum by Gum"? Remember that song?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. We got them going on that one.
yeah, there were several of those gals from that St. Mary's class that became believers. One of them is a pastor's wife that I've kept connecting with. She's Julie Lamb was her name, and then Jackie Chatterton was another. Those two, Jackie, I think, went on staff with Crusade. Well, both of them were connected with Crusade in some way or another. The Campus Crusade staff used to come down from the University of Minnesota, stay at our house, and then work a couple times a week at the junior college.
Right.
And so that was the connection to Campus Crusade.
I think that those to me are the really cool stories looking back. And as we finish up later on, want to talk a little bit about that as far as the what were the impacts that we had on that.
So Glenn, you've been a story that I have told over and over and over again. And that is when I would be deep in sleep around 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd get this phone call from you, and you would say, have I interrupted your prayer life? Are you having devotions right now? and then you'd want to talk. So we'd have long conversations about 1 o'clock in the morning.
I didn't know I was warped that earlier. Man, that sounds like me, probably.
Does anyone know where Jackie Chatterton is? She left one of her stockings in my glove compartment.
Yeah, I know where Julie is, and I think if I were to connect with Julie, she might know where Jackie is, but I don't know right now. I'll do some research on that.
No, don't work on it too hard. I lost the stocking.
Well, I'll tell her the reason I'm doing this is because I found one of her socks.
Yeah.
People always
I'm
wonder
sure
where
he
they go.
remembers that.
People always wonder where they go, Paul.
Now they always disappear, don't they?
Weren't those gals so cool? Julie and Jackie, they were wonderful young women.
She was a ball of fire.
Yeah, so
She was so much fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I did her wedding in Catholic Church in Minneapolis.
Jackie's.
Jackie's, yeah.
And Doug had to dress up in a beautiful, I don't know what the trappings of a priest. He looked great.
Did you put a collar on?
Yeah.
It was more than a collar. It was a robe.
Did you have a hat?
No, no hat. No red hat.
You're the Pope, man.
Head on, Joe. Guys, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit. We're just having way too much fun. You remember this, the old some of you might have, but this is in September of '71. They had a Jesus festival, the Rock of Salvation at the Band Shell in Winona. We did a little thing there. It was kind of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. We're gone by then.
Huh? What town?
We were in San Jose by then.
Oh, you were by then. Okay, yeah. So that was kind of a different thing we did. We talked a little bit of memories and that. Everybody knows everybody, and I don't know if everybody knows what the trajectory is or what people have done or where they've gone. It was kind of interesting for me to had an interest in finding out where you all were, and Pam, I got your information from Betty. You know, she was.
Oh yeah, and she says hello from her.
Oh.
She said, your classmate says hello." So
Oh yeah. Well, I found out about you from her, and
yeah, I live in Roanoke, Virginia.
Yeah, you do.
Mhm. Yep.
So maybe we could just get a few minutes each, and I got a little bit of music I'm going to share, guys. I tell you, Saints would fight me tooth and nail or something. I had the music loaded up to try to play it right through Zoom, and it will not do it. I tried it.
Oh no.
I should have probably sent it to Richard, and I'm sure he would have figured out how to do it. But I've got it on my phone. I'll just play a few things, and then what I'll do is I'll prepare to have. I'll put some up on OneDrive. You guys can you can pull it off as you want to and copy it. All right, make a copy of it or something like that. All right, because each song is probably worth about 2.5 million bytes. You know, 2 weeks. So, you can take it and use it as you want to. All right, but we'll at least get to hear a little bit of the music. I'll start. I'll tell you. When I was there, I was going to community college, RCC, got involved, crusade there, and Terry Riley. I don't know if you guys remember Terry, but he was probably a little bit after us a little bit, but was working with him and discipling and that. And but then after that, I came to Winona State. I got married to Jeanette, Dan. And that didn't go well. After about a year, she decided she was going one way, and I just said, "Well, Lord, what are you teaching me to be a monk the rest of my life, or what?" You know. But I took it, and I just waited and trusted in the Lord. And gave me a wonderful wife named Nancy, and navigators on campus. Then I worked at Mayo Clinic for about 12, 13 years. In 1985, decided to go on a doctorate here at the University of Kansas. And so I spent about the last 30 years teaching, and I was running a center on disability, National Center on Disability Studies. Anyway, since then I've been really focusing on learning more and applying and doing discipleship. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what's been going on in my life. I really feel close to the Lord, and I've been investing time a lot in grandkids and men. So, all right. Who would like to go next? It doesn't have to be long and involved. But
Let's hear from Dr. Tolman.
Yes.
Well, I was with the Fourth Watch. It was about the same time that Doug and Mary were, just 68 and 69. And I was, in college. I don't know if you all knew, but I dropped out of college, went through a profound depression. I was dealing with that depression when I was on the Fourth Watch. I was sometimes suicidal. The fourth watch helped me stay centered, and very interesting. During that time of suicidal ideation, I got no comfort from the Bible, but I read widely in other things, and eventually was inspired by Albert Schweitzer's life. And so I got back in college, and I selected pre-medicine. I had been in engineering before, and I selected pre-medicine, and then the rest is history. I continued on. Doors became open to me, and eventually I did medical school there at Mayo. I had actually, when I was finishing college, I left Rochester Junior College and went to Minneapolis to a Lutheran college, and I met my wife there. We married between our junior and senior year. And then I got into medical school at Mayo Clinic. I was 1 year behind Paul. He led the way. And then finished medical school there. And even though I was very interested in neurology, I decided I had to really get away from the Mayo Clinic, since I felt the medicine they practiced was fairly atypical. So I chose an internal medicine residency program in San Antonio, which was primarily a city hospital and a VA hospital, the traditional learning situations, and where I could recoup my Spanish. So I did that, and decided during that time that I really liked neurology. So I finished my 3 years of internal medicine and went back to the Mayo Clinic and did 3 years of neurology, and then I did an extended year to do some additional training in neurology, including neuro-oncology. I found I was quite interested in that and was pretty good at it. And the Mayo Clinic invited me to stay on staff, but wanted me to choose to be a neuro-oncologist. But to do so, they wanted me to go to Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City for a 2-year fellowship. And I said, listen, I'm pretty studied out. I really need to grow up and get a job. And so we turned that down, and I found this job here in Austin, Texas, with a multi-special clinic, and where I joined 4 other previously Mayo Clinic trained neurology. That was very important to me. And so, the rest is history. I retired 2 years ago after 39 years of practice, during which time I was moved into leadership positions within our clinic. Our clinic grew to be 145 doctors, and I eventually became the chairman of the board and then also chief medical officer. We got involved in a hospital construction project with eventually what became HCA, and HCA doesn't ever do things with doctors, and so they went to war with us, and eventually we got a divorce. I was kind of at the helm when all that happened, so I learned some very harsh business of medicine realities that, you don't get into the arena with the big dogs unless you got plenty of money. And then eventually I found I got burned out doing my administration job, and because I developed symptoms I thought were ALS, and I had that checked out, and it turned out it wasn't ALS, so it was a psychophysiologic syndrome I was having, and so I felt I was psychotically depressed. So I resigned my administration position, went back to just practicing neurology, which I did until I retired. So it's been learned a lot. It's been a full career. Along the way, I had 3 children. The first 2 are out of the home. The third one was born with Down syndrome and had to have open heart surgery at age 11 months, during which time she sustained brain damage. So she functions at about the age of a 4-year-old. So she's very dependent on us and lives in our home. And we get some help with her so we can, get away. They told us many years ago that we had about 4 years before her heart would fail, unless we did a 3rd heart surgery, which we declined. And she's alive now about 19 years later, so we've been blessed. But during that time, we had to face the grieving that comes from thinking your children are going to predecease you. And then we had to learn how to put away the grief, because we knew that would destroy all of our days. And so we learned some important lessons about, stepping out in faith and being okay with whatever the Lord has planned for her. And so she's still with us, and we are now retired, and so we have different plans now. What if she outlives us, kind of. So we're having to And all of our life, we've lived a frugal lifestyle, primarily building an estate for her because we want her well to be taken care of. So, and that's kind of where we are. It's been our value system. And
So, were you MK?
yes, I was. I was born and raised in Ecuador, South America, and I came to the United States just shy of my 18th birthday, so I would not have to do the draft in Ecuador. I've been back to visit once. I took my wife and two children and my parents back in 1987, which is the first and only time since I've been back. And this is a way that my wife could see what it was like for me to grow up there. She said that a different personality of mine emerged when I was in South America. And that was important for her to see. And she could understand a little bit more of my parents' work. I wanted to go back since, but the opportunity has not been there. And then with our special child, she cannot go up an airplane because of her heart. So, we'll not be traveling back. Only last year did my wife ever and have the courage enough that we think we have a good enough help to stay with our daughter that we were able to brave traveling both together out of this country. And we went with our church, we went to a visit in Israel. We toured Israel for about 10 days. But up to that point, we'd always taken separate vacations, just to have one parent here. One of the things I've done over the last 15 years, I've taken up a hobby that's been important to me since my adolescence in Quito, which is motorcycle riding. And so me and my son took that up as a hobby, and we ride as extensively as we can. And we go on trips across the United States. 2 years ago, we went out to West Virginia, and we enjoy the ride. And obviously it's a risky sport, but it's very mind-clearing as well. So I really enjoyed that. Right now, my plan is that this summer, me and another riding friend are signed up to go on a motorcycle riding tour of the Alps for 2 weeks. So that'll be an interesting time.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
So what's she do?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. It's great to hear an update on that. Great work. How about Mary and Doug?
Well, how about Paul first, and then we'll go. we had a chance to get together with Paul back in 2015 for dinner, and he kind of told us his story, and it kind of follows with what Dick just told us. So, go for it.
Sure. Well, once I left Rochester from the community college and was at the University of Minnesota for 2 years to get my undergraduate degree. Then, as Rich mentioned, I went to medical school at Mayo for 4 years, and then decided to get out of Rochester for a residency. And I was in Iowa City, Iowa, for 5 years doing general surgery. Came back to Mayo and did a plastic surgery fellowship, and then did a hand fellowship. So left the training in '84 and went to Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, where I was the first board-certified plastics guy for 180 physicians in a large medical group practice called Carl Clinic. And I was on call for 3 years straight, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I pretty much burned my lights out. So I decided I wanted a call schedule. So I had an offer to go back to Mayo on staff, but being a long time in Rochester, I decided to join a couple guys that I trained with at Mayo in Plastics in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So came to St. Cloud in 1987 and was a partner in our practice, which did very well. Unfortunately, about 12 years ago, I got clobbered with Parkinson's. So that kind of knocked me out of microsurgery and surgical career. So back in '87, one of my partners had gone to college with a guy by the name of Steve Miller, who was the president of Helps International out of Dallas, Texas. They were doing relief work in Guatemala during the Civil War. And through my partner's dad and Steve's dad, they suggested that they grouped the nonprofit would like to do medical work in Guatemala during the war. So my partner, who was contacted, couldn't go, so he said, "Would you like to go?" So this is right up my alley. I went in '87 for a site visit, and then we came back with our first medical team in 1988 with 7 people. We were overwhelmed by the needs that were going on at that time during the war, and kind of organically built a larger medical surgical team. Docs would come, or nurses would come from other parts of the country and work with us, and they would go home and say, "I can also build a team." So we've now done over 250 teams. We're at about 300,000 patient visits and over 26,000 operations. Out of that work came the O'Neill stove. In the early days, we were dealing with the toddlers, which would fall into open fires within the houses. And we had smoke inhalation issues because the people had these open fires in the house. It was hard to believe. So, and had an engineer that came, that joined the team from Dallas, and he designed the O'Neill stove, which is a state-of-the-art wood-burning stove that gets smoke out of the house, saves 70% of the wood that's normally burned in an open fire. And we put in about 250,000 of those stoves in Guatemala and other places in Central America. So I've been trying to get out. I'm still the medical director for Helps nationally, and I'd like to recruit one of you to take my job because I think I'm an old guy and I need to step back. But you know, I can't get out of the job. They won't fire me for some reason. So that's kind of what's been going on.
That's because you're so awesome.
I'm still involved with, I'm not going on the trips anymore. I kind of miss not operating and with the cleft kids. But I kind of serve where I can, promoting the teams and involved with fundraising where I can. I got married to Mary Susan in Champaign-Urbana. We moved to St. Cloud. Unfortunately, our marriage came apart. We couldn't keep her happy. We had, out of that marriage came a great daughter, Meredith, who is now in the cities with 3 kids. And so I'm in St. Cloud, and I have a place next to the kids in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. So I go down there, and the kids knock on my door, and they say, "Grandpa, will you play with me?" So it's a blast.